Hello and welcome. I am No Coffee, No Life, but you knew that already. Today, we're going to be building at this house that you see right behind me. We're in the forest, and we're going to have a conversation about the current state of the game. Because if anything, the new Mothman event and our newest scoreboard have brought up a lot of questions for me and concerns, and I can't be the only one. So let's get started. Now, this is clearly a pre-existing location, and part of this house is actually open, like you can enter it and put things inside, and it's completely accessible, and it's the lower half. The upper half is closed off completely. If you've been to this site, you know what I'm talking about, but I am not going to be decorating that lower half. What I'm going to be doing is building onto the upper half. This site is at an angle. There's a very steep incline in the back, but it's also an interesting location. There's always a raider that spawns in the back, so if you're friends with Crater, they're not going to attack you. If you're not friends with Crater, you're gonna have to kill a raider every time you load in. There's an armor workbench in the back. You have your own mailbox. So if you want to put your in-game name on your mailbox, you can do that. Now, this little house is kind of special. There's a couple of them on the map. Most of them don't have that lower section. They just have the upper half that you're seeing here right now. And the reason that they're special, I'm going to show you in a minute, is because of this decking. Right? You can see it in front of me right now. It's covered with leaves. We're going to go inside the house. You're going to see why this decking is so special. It's because it carries into the house. This is the only solid thing on the floor in the structure. Obviously, the walls are transparent. And if you like the idea of hermit crabbing your way into a building and building in here, this is a perfectly acceptable place to build your camp. It's a deal breaker for some people because it's super glitchy. The contents of your interior can kind of disappear and then reappear depending on where you're standing inside. The only thing I'm going to use the interior of that house is for my generators. I'm going to be building primarily outside during this build. So we're going to build off of the left side of the house. If you're looking at it in the front, we're building the extension on the left. And it's going to be about 6 foundations, 2x3, and I'm going to be using porch pieces for part of this build. I'm going to initially use regular foundations for the base of the house, but then I'm going to switch out some of them for porch pieces, and you'll see why. In order to completely close off the front end of this house, I'm going to be using 2 junk fences because we're placing the foundations right up against the house, and you can't place walls that close to these houses. It'll give you an error message. It won't let you place because their hitbox will bleed over onto your foundation, and it will not like that wall sitting there. So we're going to put the junk fences, we're going to burn them, and then we're going to put wall pieces that are apparently acceptable to the game, that they'll let you place them. And it's going to be a half wall and one of these top arch walls. Why, I can put these 2 and they would take up the same space as a full wall, but I can't put a full wall? I can't answer that. That's Bethesda. You'll have to take it up with them. But this is how you'll get as close to a full wall as you can. And like I said, you're going to have to put some more half walls there on the bottom, and then you can put top arches, and it'll close it off effectively on both sides. But once you've taken care of this corner of the house, the rest is fairly easy until you get to the second floor, if you decide to build a second floor. In this build, we will be creating a second floor for this house. I was lucky with the last scoreboard in that I finished it and I had about a month's time to relax and decompress from grinding it and building at the same time. And that's a problem. That's a real problem for a lot of players. this grind on these seasons. The scoreboard isn't content, it's filler, essentially, between chunks of content. And this grind burns you out. It's tiring. It makes you less likely to play the game, even if you really like the game, because you have to grind out the season. And I don't think they've come to a happy medium with seasons and content. People have jobs, school, families, children. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why you might not necessarily want to come to the game that you like and work again after having a full day of work and dealing with things that are generally unpleasant. The scoreboard is a drain, and it's a negative thing for a lot of people. And I don't think that ignoring that is a good thing for Bethesda. I think they should address it. I'm not advocating for the removal of the scoreboard, just to be clear, because it is nice. They give us a lot of camp stuff and interesting cosmetics. They need to just make it feel less like a job. But like I said, the scoreboard isn't content. I'm building contemporary porch pieces and putting them out front. There's going to be an additional 3 porch pieces on the leftmost side of this house, this camp building, on the first floor. But first, we're going to get standard foundation pieces down and place a stair so that we can access the second floor that we'll be creating at this site. Now that our stair is in place, we can put the rest of the second floor down without any issues. But getting back to what I was talking about before, while you could say events are content, they're very limited content. While the Mothman Equinox is new, it's an event, just like the Holiday Scorched are an event. And that's not to knock the Mothman Equinox event, it's actually really fun. Are there problems with it? Yes. But it was neat to go and do it on the hour. The entire server rolls on in when it starts, and that's cool. It has a lot of great things going for it. The NPCs are interesting, their backstories are neat. The books that you can slowly but surely unlock the more you do the event, and they tell the history of the group, where they started, what they've done, where they eventually went to, and who they're fighting against, curiously enough. It's really nice to have a good chunk of lore for these wise Mothman cultists. And the irony is, all the lore that they bring is a great jumping off point for a new expansion. Now I know that we're waiting on Invasion from the Stars and the Pit, which is supposed to be the expeditions, but I think Bethesda's kind of missing out on something here. People have really liked the Mothman cultists for a while now, and not expanding on a faction you've already got from the core game seems like a missed opportunity, frankly. This is kind of how they've operated with all of the factions we encounter after we get out of the vault, which is a little disappointing because frankly I would have liked to have known a little more about the responders, or at least gotten more storylines involving them. Or maybe new storylines. The Order of Mysteries. That's a faction ripe for expansion. So it's no surprise that when we finally get an event related to a faction people have really liked and wanted more about, which is, the Mothman cultists. I mean, they're having fun because they like the faction. They wanted this. People wanted more Mothman cultist stuff. It seems like a no-brainer, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading this the wrong way. Maybe there's not as much demand, perhaps, but I don't think so. I mean, look how excited people got for Zaytans when they first told us about Invasion from the Stars. I mean, they were really amped up for that, and then it got pushed to 2022, and people were crestfallen. And it makes me wonder, are we going to see a delay for the expeditions for the Pit? Because that's supposed to be our next really big, significant content chunk. And that concerns me, because if it turns out that the Pit, those expeditions are nothing but like Daily Ops Part 2, that's not going to be a good thing. Because I don't know about you, but I only do the daily ops when I have a daily that requires it. I don't really do the daily ops if I don't have to. They're kind of like the Brussels sprout of the dailies that you have to do every day, or for that matter, the weeklies. And that's putting it kindly. So if the expeditions are that times two, like if they're just a slightly bigger version of a daily ops, that's a missed opportunity for Bethesda. If that's what it's going to be, I think they shouldn't give us the pit. I think what they should do is they should sit down and give us an expansion to Pittsburgh. Not an expedition, an expansion. Give us a map. Give us areas to go where we have quests. It's a place we can travel to with a caravan, and we can take a caravan back to West Virginia, to Appalachia. But I think that's what they should do. I don't think that this should be just an expedition that's like kind of a slightly bigger version of a daily op. I think that they should make an expansion, a real expansion that gives us more map, lets us go somewhere else. And for that matter, lets us build in an entirely new zone. And I know that what I'm saying is a lot. I'm asking for a lot. I know that. And I don't expect that level of content to necessarily be free either. I don't expect that to be a free expansion. If Bethesda could give us a whole new map that we could go to, and the content that goes with that. I'm not just saying, like throw out a map and go, oh, hey, look, here's Pittsburgh. We stole it from the DLC from Fallout 3 and kind of built on it. No, I mean they build a new map for us, and they give us however many hours of playtime and quests to fill that playtime up, an open world. If they could do that, if they could make an expansion, a true expansion to this game, that would be awesome. And I think people would be behind that. I think they'd be willing to spend the money that they would normally pay for an expansion. Not this Atom Shop dole out some little like cosmetic or things that are already existing in the game just with a different skin. Or clean. We don't need any more clean things. But you get what I mean. If they gave us a real honest-to-goodness expansion, I think people would be happy with that. They would give them the time. And more importantly, they would actually, pay for that chunk of content. So yeah, that's what I think right now about the current state of the game. And if you've sat through it all and listened to it, and if you've got anything to add, your own personal observations about the game and what you think about Bethesda's non-existent rollout of content, or what they're planning on doing, or if you think the idea of an expansion is a cool idea, say it in the comments. I'd be happy to see what other people think, because I ruminate about this all the time in my brain and don't always get an outlet for it. But getting back to the build, I'm setting these roof pieces so that they're the asbestos. I flipped to metal and then I flipped to asbestos just because I like the haunted house roof, but I don't necessarily like the little dormer that sits there for every roof. I wish they had just given us a flat piece too, like an extra. Like, how much more time would it have been just to have given us a flat roof with those shingles? Who can say, other than the people working for Bethesda in their art department, whoever is in charge of coming up with content for the Atom Shop. They would know how hard it is. Or maybe their boss said, oh no, don't worry about it, just make the one with the little dormer. They don't want a flat angled roof. Why would they want that? I have one last thing to show you guys before we see the reveal of this house, and it's the left side. I mentioned earlier that I was going to use these contemporaries instead of regular foundations. And I'm going to show you how I do that. right after I put these generators in that I also mentioned earlier in the video before I started talking about what's been bugging me about Bethesda. So I'm going to put these solar powered panels inside the house. I know it's a little, stretching believability here, but this is what I'm using. I'm going to connect them with a wire, and then I'm going to use the advanced power connectors so we can feed the power directly into the building. Once that's done, and I remove this spare power connector, we're finally going to address the left side of the house, the formal entrance to the interior of this camp. Now you can see here I've got a contemporary porch piece. I'm going to move it out of the way, and now the space is clear for me to put a regular foundation in. Once I've put that regular foundation in, I'm going to add two doorway walls on the sides that don't have walls yet. And once they're up, I can remove this foundation. Once I've done that, I'm going to turn around and grab this contemporary porch piece and pop it in, and it'll go in without any issue. And we have a different kind of wooden floor now for our foundation. I'm going to flip the porch piece again so that it lines up correctly with the rest of the porch pieces. Now all that's left to do is close off the top with a top arch and a roof piece, an angled roof piece, and it's done. And here's the final build. I've managed to close off the exterior and make it look solid in the areas where I've obviously used junk fences on the second floor. There's stuff cluttering up the exterior porch. I've got my scrap box and my stash box set up so that I can dump things off before I go into the building. I'm gonna open this front door and take a look inside at our interior. And you can see I've got those lovely boards leading all the way back to the stairs. It looks really great. It's a nice change from the standard foundation floor. And I've cluttered everything up. Got the Tinker's workbench, and we're going to go up the stairs. And I've got some paintings on the walls to the second floor, which is an office area and sleeping area. We've got some stash box and a filing cabinet, and we've got our little office area with a Mothman poster. Everything's nice and cluttered. A little sleeping area with a corn husk wreath, kind of like the leftovers of the holidays lingering throughout this house, and you're going to see more of that downstairs. Some of the tree branches coming through, which is kind of nice to have that there. It's a nice little surprise. Come back through this little antechamber into the living room and kitchen area. I've managed to shove a hearth in here. I've got posters on the walls and the sad tree that has not been taken down yet. But look at my tree topper. It's a little Mothman. And we've got our simple kitchen. Pretty simply decorated, and that's the build in its entirety. It is fairly simple for a build, and it really makes use of the building just to the right of it to seem larger on the outside, but it's actually a small space on the interior of the camp because we're not using the interior of the pre-existing location. If you've made it this far and you've weathered through my critique of the game's current situation, thanks for watching. I am back from vacation and I enjoyed making this build. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I hope you learned something. If you like what you see here, then click on that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're aware when new videos release. But until next time, happy building in the wasteland.